prevention. We know that if people are on treatment, then they are less likely to transmit. In fact, it reduces the risk of transmission by 96%. So if one can get all the people who are HIV positive and put them on treatment, then it is going to be possible to reduce new infections and bring them to zero. But I think there has to be a very concerted effort looking at the key population, looking at treatment, looking at uptake of key interventions that have been shown to be effective.
Dr. when we Professor, when we were starting this interview, we did mention the fact that Kenya has not been progressing as expected, which is sort of a dangerous thing because population is growing,
yes,
yet we seem not to address the HIV question as it should. And in my mind, the ART, antiretroviral therapy culture, triggers in my mind because honestly, the Vuta Pums, you remember Vuta Pums? You know, it's a song that says even if you have AIDS, you know, you can still do the eat well, do exercise,
and all is well.
And you will, in fact, as they put it, maisha utaya sukuma. If, for example, I'm into the sex trade and nimevuta Pums, you know, I have the pills and I'm eating well, I'm healthy, and I look good, I don't look HIV-ish. What reason stops me from going back to the streets, all right, and actually continuing spreading now the virus? Should we address ART from another perspective, Dr.
I think ART is very important. It's critical because one, it also reduces the risk of people transmitting. So, but I think also the people who are HIV positive, one has to realize are the people who can transmit the virus. So there has to be interventions with people who are HIV positive. One of the things people who are living with HIV are cancelled and shown is that the risk to you who living with HIV from having casual sex or unprotected sex is actually much higher. So if one contracts, for example, another sexually transmitted illness, it will lead to failure of therapy. One may contract other viruses which are resistant, and one may actually progress so that the risk to them is actually high. And also HIV is not very transmissible. I think people have to get out from this concept that one person can be able to intentionally infect a lot of people through sexual transmission. I think that person should understand they are likely to do more harm to themselves.
But some are willing to pay the price, right, Vivian?
Yes, they are.
Some are willing to pay the price courtesy of vengeance. They say, oh my goodness, ni hour, I'm eliminating this entire society. Because at the end of the day, they know they won't come out of life alive. So the best thing to do would be to spread these things, destroy as many as you can, then go.
And live.
I think it's the wrong perception. I think nobody comes out of life alive. Everybody.
Exactly.
And I think with treatment, people can lead fairly high quality life and live with HIV positively. For one to think that they will somehow get revenge on people because they themselves got infected is a wrong kind of thinking, and they are likely to themselves progress faster. It is not possible to convince each and everyone, but I think with proper care, many of the people who are living with HIV are actually living positively. There's also the responsibility of the people who are HIV negative to protect themselves, because it is a two-way. So the people who are HIV negative have a responsibility to insist on condom use. And the people who are HIV positive have a responsibility to themselves foremost to use condoms.
Right. Professor, let's now shift gears to matters concerning men-to-men sex. how is the rate of transmission of HIV and AIDS to this kind of communities and groups, truck drivers?
I think people who have, the men who have sex with men is a population that is very heavily affected with HIV/AIDS. If you look at the studies, almost 3 times the rate in the general population. And because this is behavior that is sometimes stigmatized, and therefore they don't have access to prevention intervention. And also the risk of transmission through anal sex is actually much higher than through other forms of, through vaginal sex or other forms of sex. So men who have sex with men have very high rates of HIV.
As we wind up,
Yes,
maybe some of the last question.
Yes, and since the onset of this interaction with Professor, I'm tempted to, believe that culture is a problem when you're dealing with HIV. When you talk of behavior patterns and you look at wife inheritance, you look at, the concept of sex and sex trade, then you boil down to the stigma associated with men who have sex with men. Then you come down now to the fact that, HIV has been with us for a while. So, hey, our forefathers talked about it. By forefathers, I'm talking about now the generation that is here probably has a grandfather or an elderly father who identified with when HIV came to Kenya, right? Either infected or affected. So they're thinking, ikitu bana, it's with us for a long time. Let's do the swag behind it and, move on with life. And as we take that risk, now we find that we're not progressing, Daktari. What is the definite solution to the HIV question in this country?
I think the permanent solution to HIV definitely will have to be still in behavior change. I think one of the things is that we should not tire. And I think that malaise that comes from we've been trying this for so long, it's not working, it's likely to lead us to give up just when we are about to succeed. So I think one of the things is like to keep the efforts going, because the efforts were there, they've brought us so far. We are very close. I think if one can be able to reduce the prevalence, as I said, the risk of transmission depends on how many people. So as you keep reducing the prevalence, then it is going to work. I think the younger generation should realize that life cannot be the way it was. Right. And for them, I think they are fortunate because they've grown with the knowledge that condom use should be the norm. So it is much easier for the younger generation.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Professor, for coming to our studios and for telling us more about HIV and AIDS in the country, actually.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Viewers, we now take a short break. We take a short break. When you come back, we have more lined up for you. We have the Court 254 coming up next. We'll be talking about the divorces and your opinions. Brought to you by Wycliffe Gorey.